Hey guys, how you going? This is BillyEatWorld again, and even though today's news in the Battlefield community has been dominated by Firestorm leaks, well, we're not going to talk about that at all. We're actually going to talk about Rush, which, as you guys know, is by far my favourite game mode in the franchise, and I've been waiting for it in this game since launch. Now, the reason we're covering this today is because, well, in a nutshell, 32-player Rush is finally playable from the server browser, and no surprise, but I honestly think it's probably the best thing that's happened in BF5 to date. But not everyone is going to agree with that, which I completely understand. So that's what we're going to get into today, and we're going to talk about the good and the bad when it comes to Rush. Alright, so to kick off, let's start with the disappointing news, and that's that Rush is only going to be with us for a short period of time. And by short, I mean really short. It's actually only going to be playable, at least initially, until the 20th of March, so basically only 2 weeks. Now, we did see Squad Conquest extended for a bit longer because it was so popular, but obviously there's no guarantee, especially with Firestorm coming, that that is going to happen with Rush as well. And I mean, once again, if we use Squad Conquest as a bit of an indicator, I wouldn't hold my breath about Rush becoming a permanent mode anytime soon, even if it is also super popular. Now, the other disappointing thing about the new Rush is that it's only playable on 3 maps at the moment: Narvik, Twisted Steel, and Devastation. But with that being said though, from the few hours that I have had to play with this mode so far, it does look like it plays out pretty decently on all of those maps. One thing that is pretty obvious though is that the play area does seem to be fairly small compared to previous games, which makes things pretty hectic, and the rounds seem to be shorter as well. But I mean, once again, I can't really complain because at the end of the day, what's the alternative at the moment? And that's Frontlines, which happens to suffer from maps that are probably too big. Now onto the good news, and I think really the first thing that should be said is that even though I think it's pretty good, BF5 Rush obviously isn't up to the standard of, say, BF3 Rush. And that's because, well, after all, this is only a limited time game mode, and so it's obvious that DICE haven't spent as much time on it as they would have in, say, previous games. But with that being said though, I mean, it has been a breath of fresh air compared to the only other linear 32-player mode, Frontlines, which we've already talked about heaps on this channel. And the way that I see it is that even though it might not be the best iteration of Rush we've ever seen, well, it does fix a lot of the bigger issues that Frontlines currently has. Basically, the main issue though, if you remember, is the lack of team balancing, because at the moment it's not uncommon to be put on the losing team for like 10 games in a row. And I mean, sure, the same issue still affects Rush now, it definitely hasn't been fixed yet, but it's not so obvious because in general the rounds are much shorter, and so you don't notice as much because you're always switching sides. And not just that, like I've said before, things like the restricted out-of-bounds area that's in Rush and the fact that it's a mode with tickets prevents the grindy games, which are very common in Frontlines. And so, in a nutshell, as far as I see it, I'm not too worried about whether Rush is perfect or not at the moment, because it won't be with us after the 20th of March, but I just hope that it helps DICE wake up a bit to what they need to do to actually fix Frontlines. Now, just before we finish up, I don't think I could finish this video without mentioning the main criticism I'm seeing at the moment about Rush, which is the explosive spam and the new artillery mechanic. And sure, I mean, I completely agree with this, but at the end of the day, that's probably less of an issue with this mode and more of an issue with explosives in general, and the fact that they're going to be more obvious on smaller maps like this. Artillery, on the other hand, well, that's another thing entirely, because I mean, I think hands down pretty much most people in the community agree it's not a good idea. Because I mean, sure, it's SL based now, like it is in, say, Insurgency, but at the end of the day, still, no one likes getting killed by indirect fire, and DICE really should have known better, considering that we've been complaining about artillery since at least Battlefield 1. Also, last but not least, another thing that I don't think I can leave out of this video is why I think DICE have chosen to go down this path of making classic game modes like Rush temporary, when that's never been the case in the previous games. And in a nutshell, I think it's probably got a lot to do with Firestorm and the fact that we now know it's not going to be standalone and it will be part of the core game. Basically, the reason this is really important, and it's actually important for all of the other modes as well, is because when it does release at the end of this month, it's going to siphon off a huge chunk of players, and it may end up killing some of the smaller game modes. And whether or not this is a good thing for the franchise is probably the topic for another video, but in a nutshell, at the end of the day, you know, in the current gaming climate, DICE have to put Firestorm first, meaning that unfortunately the old school modes like Rush are going to get left behind. But anyway, guys, that just about wraps up this video. So as always, make sure you let me know what you think of 32-player Rush in the comment section below. And also let me know what you think about it being a temporary mode, and how do you feel about Firestorm potentially taking over the game and maybe killing off some of these less popular game modes. As always though, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, and please feel free to check out the links in the description if you want to see any more of these videos. And also don't forget you can find my Twitter and Discord links down there as well if you want to keep in touch. And as always, until next time, see you later and have a good one.